Hello everybody, Andrew Cuneo here. Today we have a really interesting deck. It's basically technically a 4-colored deck, but it is a absent themed and human themed creature deck. So we only have creatures. This is why I have this like funny title, which is really, I'm really in the search for Omori here, as you can see, and camera, by the way, Poggies. And I think I am finally able to say that I'm done. I'm done with trying to find, which is a thing I usually do in Arena, trying to find the kind of best deck for the format that I'm playing. And right now I'm kind of usually playing Standard and Alchemy and Best of 3 mostly though. And there it is pretty much like Rakdos X-based decks, like either Grixis, Jund, Classic Rakdos with like a Plaza of Heroes to play like a Traxa, maybe to reanimate it even or something like that. And then the One Ring and like Bowmasters. And so I was thinking about ways how to beat that basically with creature decks, because I like creature decks in general. And one way to beat the Bowmasters, for example, is to play, aside from your own copies of Bowmasters, creatures that don't have 2 toughness. So this card becomes pretty darn bad in general, and is just something they should sideboard out in the game 2 or game 3 in general, but they often don't even really do that, and it's just a laughable card, I think, but people still play it. And the One Ring is also like kind of vulnerable to discard spells like the Juggernaut Peddler. It's vulnerable to the Anointed Peacekeeper, and it's just really kind of bad for even 1 mana in facing A-Haywire Mite, because you can't just respond to the One Ring draw trigger as the Mite player with your Mite, especially if they don't have any burden counters on the ring already. When they play the ring after the Mite, you can respond with the Mite trigger, and then they don't draw a single card because this exiles it, and you get 3 life. So super good creature card. So that is one reason why I think the deck is decently positioned versus those kind of decks, because it basically really nicely hits already 8 of those cards that they like barely even sideboard out. And then there's of course like Crucius, and one of the on-curve things you can do about Crucius in creature decks, if you are on the draw, like one of the only things basically is Juggernaut Peddler. Like you can't basically flash in a creature to like remove it, which is what you would need, for example, right? That's just not existing. So this is like one of the only ways I think to deal with that kind of card, as with Crucius in your creature deck, which is just another big argument for playing this kind of version, which is like a human-based creature deck that is therefore locked in the Ors of colors, and I think it's kind of locked in the absent colors with the green Augur of Autumn human 3-drop here. And this is also like an incentive, because when you want to beat like really strong and super efficient mid-range decks, I think you gotta have this kind of disruption. You have the A-Haywire Mite and those 2 like discardy kind of creature spells. And then you need card advantage. And what better card advantage spell to cast or to use than Augur of Autumn, I think. Like this kind of can really be like your own version of the One Ring, because the Augur is drawing so many cards. Like basically you're also like kind of limited to how much mana you have when you just keep going off with this card. And it's actually pretty easy to enable the Covenant in this deck as well, because you only have the Juggernaut Peddler, Jirina, and the Augur itself, of course, with the 2 power, and the rest is mostly 1-powered creatures or 3-powered creatures, or even like more. This is 4 power, this is 5 power. Adeline is in particular nice because it creates 1/1 creatures and also has like a scalable like power herself. So it's super easy actually in this deck to enable the Covenant, especially if you play so many creatures and like have like this kind of selection of which creature you're playing, because you're only playing creatures. And this is also a big reason why that's the case is Augur of Autumn, of course, because what I was finding when playing good creature decks in that format already, like this version arose from Naya Convoke essentially, which is a deck I posted already on the channel in Standard, and in Alchemy it's even better. It's really good in Alchemy, I think. I just think one of the like weaknesses the deck still has or had was board wipes, especially in best of 3, where you can like, because it's usually like Rakdos X-based decks, where you can board in additional copies of the Heat Hook Massacre, if you know what I mean. Like Spiteful Banditry or like Brotherhood's End, stuff like that, you want to have access to discard spells. But this is really not where you want to be when you have like an Augur of Autumn in play. Like you will realize it when it's the case. Like this is like it's absolutely game losing if there's like a non-land, non-creature spell on the top of your library. So this is one of the reasons why I'm at least main deck only playing non-creatures. I have some in there, but this is like exceptions. And by the way, you're rarely sideboarding. I think this deck is built to beat Rakdos X base deck. So often it's just gonna be 0 sideboarding unless they play like a reanimator based deck, and then you can play like a Trespass or 1 or 2 Viconius. But usually it's not going to be sideboarding. Sometimes maybe those though, but it really depends. But yeah, one of those ways to beat those kind of board wipes, which can be annoying versus this kind of deck, is either text spells, but obviously better actual kind of discard spells, or a card like Jirina. That's a huge reason why a card like this is good in this deck, because we are playing mostly humans, not all of them. The 1-drops are not humans, Chetmere and Bowmasters. So she does not protect everyone, but she protects a lot of the board, probably enough. And the exile effect for the opponent's graveyard can also be valuable. Let's say you're up against like a Trazel Chunt deck or like a Atraxa Reanimator deck, like with Assemble, something like that. So that's also just a nice bonus. But just having the 2 toughness to dodge the Bowmasters and being able to protect versus cards like Brotherhood's End or Spiteful Banditry is so valuable, and arguably a reason why you should maybe include 1 more copy in the sideboard of Jirina, Dauntless General. Melira has the upside by, for example, of course, dodging cut down, but she also protects your finisher, your big sledgehammer in the deck, which is Chetmere, Nexus of Revels. So the reason why I make this like red splash with Crucius is it kind of makes sense, right? Because you play this like human-based themed deck, you're already playing Crossroads, you are already playing the Halfling, so it just makes sense to include Crucius. Just 1 copy for now, because I individually do not have enough black and red. I have enough red individually, I think barely for turn 3 Crucius, and of course for turn 2, because this provides one of the 2 colors anyways, but for turn 3 just enough, but then not enough also black, or the other way around. Not also enough red, I think. So just 1 copy for now, could be changed on the future. 1 flex spot in the deck, by the way, is the Adeline. I think I'm not sure. This might just be the worst card in the deck, and if this is the case, that this is the worst card in the deck, you maybe know what kind of beast you're dealing with here. So Chetmere, big finisher in the deck. The really only splashed card here, because Crucius is kind of castable. But this you can cast also with Delighted Halfling, and in the late game, mid or late game, this is a mid-range deck, not a beatdown deck. You mostly have a Crossroads or a Courtyard that you can use for the Chetmere, or treasures from Old Rutstein or Crucius. By the way, how do you pronounce this? Like in Germany you would say Rutstein, but I think you say Rutstein, right? I don't know. But yeah, you can use those kind of treasures, or the Halfling, or in the mid game those kind of lands, to go for red for Chetmere here. And this is basically what the deck is doing. I was playing Naya Convoke before, and it also had Chetmere, even more copies of Chetmere, and like the Knight-Errants of Eos they're like kind of from there. As I said, this is the version that basically arose from that kind of deck. So those are still in there, because they are super strong and super good for the archetype, but only 2 Chetmeres, because we just really need this like over-the-top finisher effect. Because when you're in kind of like mid-range mirrors, of course we're playing a totally different deck than our like mid-rangey opponents, but when you're in those kind of mirrors, you want like over-the-top ways. This is usually how you beat them, right? So this is one of the ways, I think, how you beat it in general. I think in addition to playing the disruption, playing the card advantage like Knight-Errant of Eos, Augur of Autumn, Crucius, Inquisitor Captain are super nice card advantage cards, and Augur of Autumn, as I tried to mention, probably the best one therefore. In addition to just having this like over the top thing in Chetmere, because you are creating multiple bodies as well. with the Inquisitor Captain, with the old Redstein, whatever, and the Bowmasters. Another reason why Bowmasters is actually just quite nice in this deck. Also Adeline helps with Chetmere though. Less with the Knight-Errant, but with Chetmere's of course. You would love for them to be humans, but I think you're kind of like forced to play them. This makes the mana base a little awkward because you are forced to play enough Plague on turn 2, but I think I just kind of got there. And yeah, this is basically good because it's a flash card, it's good versus other Bowmasters, it's good versus the ring, and of course great to play on curve as soon as turn 2, especially because of the Knight-Errant of Eos. But yeah, that is the theme, and I think now I go over the cards one by one rather quickly because I mentioned kind of most of them already anyways. The Mite is kind of like a super good 1-mana creature in the deck. Like what other 1-mana creature to play in your like mid-rangey kind of deck? And that is just such a good answer to one of the like most played cards in the format, and also probably one of the like best cards in the format in the One Ring. So this card just makes so much sense because of that, and you want to have cheaper creatures to be able to convoke this out earlier, to have like as many creatures in play because of Chetmere. The colorless for cast helps a lot because in Alchemy you're kind of limited in the mana base, especially if you play a multicolored deck, especially if you're kind of like splashing for a 4th color. So the colorless, really nice to play as soon as turn 1, and also nice with the Delighted Halfling, because if you do not have a legendary creature, this just adds 1 colorless, which of course can then be useful to cast like a Haywire Mite. And yeah, this card is just super good in the format in Alchemy because of its 2 toughness and being a 1-mana dork. Like you have the Citadel Starboard, I think, which I was also playing in this kind of version because it's so good in fixing, right? It adds 1 mana of any color without it needing to be legendary or anything, but it is 1 toughness, unfortunately, and it also does not curve into like 3 drops on turn 2, which this one is providing. So while we are missing a little bit of like fixing potential, you still have to like play this in your creature based Alchemy deck, right? It has the 2 toughness again, which is so important, and you just have this like very early mana acceleration, just a super good payoff for being in green in a creature deck. And we all know the good old turn 2 Crucius, but let me tell you, turn 2 Peacekeeper is also nice, or any 3-drop on turn 2. As I said, I think you're kind of forced to play this. Makes the mana base a little bit awkward because you have to have non-human black, but I think I just got there with the mana based. Again, super nice versus damage based board wipes or like destruction based ones, I suppose, but those are rarely being played anyways. The Graveyard Hate is really nice. Super important to play the Peddler on curve. I think this is one of the most being picked plays on turn 2 over other 2-drops in the deck, so that probably just speaks for itself. And on other note, the Juggernaut is just really bad. In Historic even more because it's higher card quality, but also in Alchemy the power level is just so high, so that's the 5-3 is just almost, it's almost like a discard, I think, because the Juggernaut is just so hilariously bad, so they don't want to cast it. You do just a target, by the way, always the Crucius anyways, if they don't have another one, or like a Fable, for example, to replace the Juggernaut card. So it's not like a disadvantage in that sense anyways. But even if that's not the case, I think the Peddler has to be played because there's simply no better option. But yeah, you can block it, for example, with like a 3-power Inquisitor Captain. Bowmasters is pretty nice to just ping it for 1 and then block it with the Peddler. Usually like them attacking you is not like, I don't know, killing you in a sense, because you are just hitting so much harder when you swing back. So there's a bunch of reasons why the Juggernaut is not playable. Melira is just a great protection card, again super nice with the Chetmere, and just good in the deck in general. I just really want something to be able to be played on turn 2 to protect my vulnerable 3-drops. Like this at least has an EDP, same as the Peacekeeper, which is one of the reasons why this is a 4-off, besides not being legendary. But the other 3-drops like Adeline, Augur of Autumn, and Crucius just really are kind of naked, and therefore like disruption and protection 2-drops are just really nice to have. Also just really nice for the Peacekeeper, right? To just make sure that this gets to keep naming its thing, or I guess in Melira's case to be able to just also rename. This is also like a sneaky thing that you can do. You can jump a Sheoldred or a Juggernaut or trade with something with the Peddler and target it with Melira, and then just get to have another look / another EDB with whatever creature you are using. Great card in general, really good with Coven, really nice with Jetmir. It's just an add-a-line. As I also just mentioned before, maybe one of the only flex spots in the deck. Flex spots, I think it's spots. Augur of Autumn, probably best card draw spell in the format, perhaps for creature decks. Still, I'm not sure, but this is where I'm at right now. It's a little challenging for the double green, but you have to play already so much green in general for the halfling, but mostly you're just gonna get there, and in general you don't want to play this too early anyways, but this can be a downside of the card in a multicolored deck for sure, but it's still just absolutely insane how many cards you're able to draw in the even somewhat early game, but mostly mid and late game, of course. Then one copy of Crucius, of course. Old Radstein is just so nice in being able to create like many tokens. Like you get to create a token each turn, either a treasure token or creature tokens, and the creature tokens are so good early on in the game, or also later, of course, to convoke out the Knight-Errant of Eos, and of course super nice to get higher Jetmir modes, or of course ideally the 9 creatures mode to just almost assuredly win right away with the card. So the tokens actually for those reasons are super nice in the deck, and are one of the reasons why I'm just so happy with the card, and also just being able to just kind of give you another way to have the red mana for Jetmir by being able to create the treasures also consistently, importantly, because you are assuredly only creating treasures and creatures. So yeah, the Radstein is just really nice because of those reasons. I also would like to play more of them, but I just really don't want to play too many legendaries with the Augur of Autumn, right? Because you would have to legend roll them. Those of course are exceptions, because I feel like I just really need those. But for example, you can also like just sacrifice a Jirina, give your, or I guess most of your team indestructible swing, and then for example don't have to like trade or lose in combat to any bigger creatures of the opponent, and then you can just, or I guess play the other one right away before you attack. Just a pretty good card in general, the Inquisitor Captain. Just a good curve topper. Again, really nice with Knight-Errant of Eos and the Jetmir. Jetmir we already discussed, and this is just one of the best, or one of the better humans, let's say, in the format, I think, especially if you have all those ways to create both multiple bodies and create or cast, I guess, cheaper creatures in the deck. Then the mana base is kind of okay. You are having only 23 lands, I think, yes, because of the mana dorks. Maybe 24 is where you want to be. I definitely tried this before. This is also something you can do. This is where I am at right now, because in the early game I like to hit the lands from the top of the library with Augur of Autumn, and in the so it's not always that bad if you don't have extra lands in hand. You kind of really only need 3 or 2, I guess, with this. And then in the late game I also don't want to hit too many lands in I don't want to have too many lands in the deck because of the Augur of Autumn hits from the top of the library, but maybe 24 is where you want to be. But keep in mind that this is also kind of counting as a land, and all you really have to do is to ensure to have enough green on turn 1, which is 14 basically, or even more technically if you're on the draw with Forsaken Crossroads. A big upset for the mana base, of course, is a Secluded Courtyard, though, for this human creature based deck, of course. Only one fast land though, which is kind of sad, but it is what it is, I guess. Just some disruption in non-creature form here. The other non-creature spell is just a Go for the Throat. Graveyard Hate, Viconia probably over Trespasser usually, but I'm not sure. Maybe you are supposed to play or to have a hearse, an unlicensed hearse in there as well, but also not super sure about that. Talia is really nice versus like ramp or control, I guess. Basically decks that don't run Orcish Bowmasters, and yeah, then it's just still a great card. Of course, a nice option to have access to in the sideboard, then just some removal in creature form, maybe a Rasad, because sometimes you might maybe not have the white and the mana base, and then the Delighted Halfling would be able to cast it, but I'm also not sure. Maybe a third Brutal Gothar is where you would want to be. Lauren, arguably not even necessary, but you know, maybe you are up against a deck where this is decent. Maybe Ramp with the Leyline bannings, but they don't really have other things, right? So I guess they could still play Bankbuster, but probably still not worth playing this over any of the main deck cards. But I guess it makes sense to have this in your sideboard when you're playing a human-based creature deck. And then Elish Norn is kind of nice because there is still technically the Avernus Reanimated deck in the format. It's not being played too much, at least it was not too much played when I was playing Best of 3 Alchemy, but this kind of just shuts down the deck, I think, because most of the creatures that they are playing are EDB trigger based creatures, basically, aside from like Raffine, I guess, but I'm not sure how much people want to play Raffine right now anyways. So yeah, this just kind of like shuts down the deck, which is super nice. This is especially good if you would have multiple Cruciuses and then less CMC 4 or more cards. I guess with CMC 4 you could look for 2, but yeah, it's still good, I think, to include or to have in the sideboard versus that kind of deck. And also you get to double your own triggers. In particular, nice with those two in the Inquisitor Captain and the Knight-Errant of Eos, and also pretty nice with like the discardy spells. Like, let's say you can, I also had this in the past, follow it up with a Inquisitor Captain and then get 2 triggers and then just hit the Peddler potentially, and then you also get 2 triggers, and it just kind of snowballs from there on. So Elish Norn actually just a pretty cool card for your own deck, but it's only in the sideboard for decks where it is also good against. Alright, and I think now I am through with the, again, probably a little longer deck tech, which often ends up being when I do them, but yeah. Deck is pretty good, I think. I'm super happy. Again, I think I'm actually kind of like done in the, or with the search of finding the kind of like best creature deck for the format, so I'm very glad to have been able to coming up with this. It's really fun to play. The deck list just works if you will, so you can just kind of, I think, cast the cards and probably can expect them to just kind of work. But of course it makes a lot of sense to just take a step back always and think about a couple of things the opponent might have in hand, the opponent might come up with in the next turn, and of course for your own deck. Also, how to play your lands can be tricky, but if you're not too experienced with decks like this in general, or with this deck in particular, of course, even then I think just like casting the cards can also just work. I think it's just that good. But yeah, if you want to see how to play it, if you are experienced with it, I invite you now to join me onto some high level gameplay. We even faced rank 1, I think, in the on the mythic ladder in the first game here. So yeah, let's check out some constructed games and see how the deck list does. See you in the arena. Hello guys, here I just wanted to add some quick commentary because I was thinking about playing the Augur of Autumn or to play the Bowmasters here and convoke out the Knight-Errant of Eos. Since it was so unlikely, I think, for them having the removal, we also looked at their hand earlier, they already used the Go for the Throat. I think it's somewhat safe when it just comes to chances to just play the Augur of Autumn here, and overall the more valuable play would be this in the long term, to play the Augur one turn earlier or two even. I'm not sure, probably just one. I'm also not completely sure about that, but probably overall it would be a little bit more valuable, which is super important in those kind of mid-rangey matchups. The thing is that the opponent could have a Sheoldred, and I cannot block the Juggernaut the next turn, and the turn after, since I have to convoke out the Knight-Errant of Eos, most likely with everything I got, I only have the Knight-Errant of Eos, and if they play the Shelly next turn, we just straight up lose to damage. And while you could say this is too theoretical, it's actually kind of obvious because you are in burn rage versus like Rakdos decks so fast. So taking 1/5 from this Juggernaut can be like game losing, especially if you follow it up with only one creature being untapped. They're ready to block on the following turn anyways. So thinking a little bit ahead in the future and considering potential plays from the opponent, always important, especially if there's a 5-3 on the board where you have no blockers. Just as a little note, I would not play this like this anymore.